Hey everyone, Sloan here. I am really just delighted to bring you another podcast. Nothing brings my heart fuller with joy than launching another conversation out to you guys. This one is really special. Our guest, Andrew Behar, is the CEO of As You Sow, which, if you pay attention to the world of, I guess, what I call granola capitalism, i.e. shareholders who actually care about what the companies they invest in do in the world, is one of the sort of foundational nonprofit and advocacy organizations that's really making a difference in the proxy process. We talked to him about the powers that are typically afforded to shareholders with regards to proxies, how he chooses to engage on various issues. They're active on everything from pesticides to coal and all sorts of other things. And then, the structural changes that he's seen over the years and how he judges the difference between activity and progress. In other words, when does he know that something actually matters? Then we talk about, whether or not the largest asset management firms can actually be true fiduciaries in contexts where they have existing client relationships with the companies whose proxies they're voting. Very, very interesting conversation. Listen on and find out why Ashby says that Andy is who he wants to be when he grows up. Before you do that, or maybe after, or maybe during, I don't know, leave us a review so that more people can hear about the work we're doing on the podcast and that we can get more fun guests for you. And also, if you have a question that you want us to answer in the Dear Ashby segment at the end of it, do not be a stranger. That's lame. Go ahead and write us an email, freemoneypod@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at freemoney42069. Take it away, Sharkbait.
Ahoy, Free Money Podcast listeners! I'm Sharkbait Buckley, the Disclosure Pirate, and I'm here to set ye straight about what's going on with this here show. Sloan Ortel works for Invest Vegan LLC, a New York registered investment advisor. Ashby Monk works for Stanford University, Adapar, Future Proof, Long Game, and various startups. All opinions expressed by either Sloan or Ashby are entirely their own, and do not reflect the opinions of their crew or any company. Clients who invest vegan may maintain positions in securities and strategies discussed in this podcast. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Invest Vegan and its representatives are properly licensed or exempted, and a client agreement has been executed. Arr.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar.
Welcome to the Free Money Podcast. It's where we give you the Brooklyn Bay Area consensus about institutional investing that you desperately crave.
You do. Welcome to Friday.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, although it's like, I think that part of the reason people like this podcast is because we record it on a Friday, but usually release it on like a Monday.
Yeah, exactly. So they get the Friday vibes in the pain cave.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So they just like think we're like this all the time.
Exactly. I was actually wondering if like the fact that this is like a big treat for us, because this is like one of the more fun things I do. Like not every day you get to just like show up and wing a podcast for an hour. If it like translates into enjoyment on our listeners' part, I'm not sure. Would love the feedback.
Well, I think that the lovely thing about doing a cozy podcast like this is that, we actually like know a lot of the listeners.
Yeah, exactly.
And like talk to them, and so unfortunately or unfortunately, I don't know what that means for the quality of the feedback that we get from them. Because they're like,
that was great. That was great.
Garden tips. Love it.
Keep them coming. Speaking of us basically just talking to one another, I had an interesting insight. I've been studying like the technology of investing, and I had to give a speech. Mm-hmm. And I was in the speech, and I was trying to explain to people that like my goal is this is a bit of a random thought, but I'd go with it because we don't script this thing. My goal was to bring technology around pension funds in order to make them smarter and better and faster and all this stuff that's in that one song. And
the Daft Punk
the
song.
Daft Punk song. Yeah. Thank you. You finished my sandwiches. And I was like, it's like Iron Man, like Iron Man's a human being. You wrap that suit around him and now he's a superhero. And then the smart people in the audience were like, but Iron Man built the suit. Like, he's pretty smart. What you mean is this dude War Machine he's like the sidekick of Iron Man, because he gets to wear the suit, but he didn't really do it. And then I realized the whole speech was becoming too war, and I was like, I don't really want to do it. And so I come up with a new analogy. Do you have electric bikes in New York City?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the new thing. Like, you can't go into a bike shop. Everybody's got electric bikes. And my new analogy for what I want to do to pension funds is, if you're driving in a car and you come up on like an elder person riding a bike and they're sitting up kind of tall and chilling out, but they're doing 35. Yep. It looks unnatural. You're like, what the fuck? This person is killing it.
Yeah.
They're like sitting vertical on a stand, and they're got gray hair and they're doing 35.
And their gray hair is just blowing in the wind.
Nobody's huffing and puffing. You're like, that is the best athlete I've ever seen. That's my new analogy. I want that for pension funds. The electric bike idea.
That's a lot better because, first of all, the no war thing is big.
Yeah.
Because, so much somebody at some point in the 80s was like, let's reference the art of war all the time.
No kidding.
In business conversations.
Yes.
And then ever since then, it all became about war. But, that's a product that people make money selling. And that transforms the way that they experience their environment. And that's what you're trying to do with data, right?
Yeah. Not me anymore. We're not going to sell war anymore. Not on the Free Money Podcast. We give it away for free. We give you war for free.
Yeah, exactly. We give you the tools to defeat your enemies with nonviolence and good vibes.
Exactamente. I can go to the news.
Oh, all right. You got news? Oh,
unless you got anything going this weekend before we move to the news.
I am headed out to Arizona for my partner's grandfather's funeral.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. He passed away from COVID maybe almost a year ago at this point.
WTF, the COVID got him.
COVID got him. But yeah, really cool guy. He immigrated from Iraq actually, and was like a civil engineer and built bridges all over Arizona and the kind of Mountain West. And fun fact, when Claire was talking to one of my family members, who's also from Phoenix, he was like, "Huh, is your grandfather the reason there are all these random Iraqis in the in the Arizona Bridge Department?" Because my uncle is like a urban planner. He's like, "Is he the reason that like literally everyone in that department is Iraqi?" And it turns out that he was responsible for a bunch of chain migration.
That's amazing.
Where because being Iraqi in the 1950s is kind of a weird time.
Yeah, so people wanted to get together. They wanted to be in a group, safer in groups.
Yeah, and out just doing cool stuff and building bridges. So I'm really excited to. It'll just be great to get out to Arizona
awesome.
And be warm.
Yeah, have fun, enjoy yourself.
Yeah. You got anything?
We're getting 4. We've ordered up 4 doses of the COVID shot.
Ooh.
Yes. 2 for the children's, and while we're there, they offered to do the boosters for the parents. So I was like, yeah, we'll do the boosters over there.
That's a vertically integrated experience.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, so the kids are getting it. So like we said last week, 5G is going to be coming in nice and tight.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the plan. So I bet we're going to be like pretty sick. If it's like the second one, I'll be pretty sick. The news, Sloan. This is personally interesting and crabbiness inducing.
Oh, wow. I'm like,
so the interesting part up front. Interesting part is CalSTRS, California teachers' retirement system, I think it might be California State teachers' retirement system, is moving to the next phase in their collaborative investment model, which you may recall I helped to invent. Yes, that's the personal interesting bit.
Hair flip.
Yeah, like we don't brag much here, just about every 7 or 8 minutes. But so this one, CalSTRS announced through our friend Scott Chan, deputy CIO, at their board meeting, the model's working. He said,
I'm personally shocked to hear that.
A lot of people are when they heard that I had anything to do with it. Their collaborative model, they describe it as an investment strategy to reduce costs. It's my thing. Control risk and boost returns with strategies such as managing more assets in-house. Yeah. Co-investing.
Love that.
And collaborating with other peers. The collaborative model, according to Scott Chan, helped to add 12 basis points to CalSTR's overall return in 2020.
12 basis points?
Yeah. Okay, before you get snarky.
I know that's like $1 trillion.
That's $369 million that I just added to the state.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
So I'm walking around. Basically, everybody's going to be buying me beers for a little bit.
You're triggering parking tickets and being like, no, don't worry about it. I have an account with this.
Be like, you do know my collaborative model. Save the state. My crabbiness, Sloan. Our nice magazine friends at the Institutional Investor magazine incorrectly stated in their article on this same topic that this model was invented 20 years ago and it's direct investing. That's the Canadian model, Institutional Investor magazine. Gosh. Quit trying to steal my $369 million thunder. By giving that to the Canadians.
Yep. I mean, yeah, that's a Canadian event.
But I loved it. The reason I had to do this one was like he freaking calculated the bips that this, that this model saved.
It seems like it would be a hard thing. I mean, like I'm sure that foots out and it's really, but like I'm amazed that he can do that so tightly because like I don't know how you calculate like the agita that you save by not having a bazillion external manager. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
but we know the data and analytics in these organizations are top notch.
Yeah. Almost as good as our tech. I mean,
almost as good as our tech. We are next level technologized. I agree with you. I don't know if I'm just using the fact that he said it out loud at a board meeting as a heuristic for it's real. But if we had to go and do the math, I don't know.
Yeah. It's certainly a feather in your cap whether or not it gets attributed.
Yeah, I will note there is zero attribution anywhere today.
Well, that's the perks of being an academic. You get to put your ideas out into the
other people
the world. And then have them like commercialized by.
Yeah, but you know me. I want to lead it to the water and then do a cannonball in the water. That's what I want to do. Next story comes to us from India.
Oh, one of my favorite
this
countries.
one is an interesting one because it's about public pension plans and investors being attracted to India through tax incentives. And I think we're used to hearing about big institutional investors around the world, CDPQ, OMERS, Ontario Teachers, going to India to invest in infrastructure, partnering with this NIIF Sovereign Development Fund. The first Americans that I can find got the same tax approval just this week. The School Employees Retirement System of Ohio. Huh? It's not like I've been like tweeting about, I don't even, what is that? CIRZO. I haven't been tweeting about CIRZO much. That's my favorite acronym of the day. I think you'll find it's pronounced CIRZO.
Yeah.
CIRZO. But anyway, seriously, the school employees retirement system of Ohio, which is the public pension plan there, is the latest, according to the news, to get this exemption for infrastructure investments in India. And they plan to go and allocate capital there, apparently. According to the Indian government, I have to say, this was the Indian government reporting how much money Surso will be investing in India.
Yep. But that's awesome news. I mean, like that's been, that's in fairness, though, that's a really, really hard thing to do. Just in terms of, I mean, like I don't know. I've heard horror stories about pensions involved. Going over to India. When I was over there doing my like grand tour of Indian CFA societies, I would talk about like, are all these pensions doing stuff? And people would be like, yeah.
That's why they set up the NIIF to handhold all these organizations. The NIIF, which is the National Infrastructure Investment Fund. I had to go into a part of my brain that doesn't involve voice. And so it's the National Infrastructure Investment Fund, and it coordinates the investments on behalf. So it kind of is a part fund, part broker. And look, it's a pretty exciting thing.
Yeah.
And I got more news for you, Sloan, but I'm also worried that we might have a guest waiting.
We don't yet.
Okay, great. That's just how thoughtful I am, though.
Yeah, that's just you being really mindful.
You know what they say. I'm the most humble person I've ever met. Next bit of news. Very personal. My wife's company got funded.
Schoolitics.
Yeah, dude. Yes. So
that's a big deal.
And that means my marriage is on stronger ground than it's ever been, because when my wife is happy with her job, it's still hanging on by a thread. It's just that thick floss. The real thick one, that's the marriage. And anybody with two small kids will know what I'm talking about. It's hanging on by a thread. But yeah, so she just, since this is the Related Parties podcast, their company is bringing data and analytics into public schools. And, they just closed their seed stage financing. It was a big deal in our family this week.
That's amazing.
I know.
That's really, and that's Courtney. Didn't she? I want to say she did like a Teach for America thing.
She did.
That's probably wrong.
No, you're spot on. She spent 5 years at Teach for America. She was like building the algorithm for admissions, and she did the alumni work. Because what people don't know about Teach for America, maybe not, is it's mostly about the alumni. They want the alumni to go and run for office and then fix public education.
Gotcha. So it's like the Federalist Society for
just stop there, Slob.
For public schools. I get it.
I should also mention, this was my other bit of news in the Related Party segment of our news cycle. I am getting so much outperformance from my vegan asset manager.
Well, we try.
I mean, your October was nuts. They're talking about that guy Dan Loeb. They should be talking about Sloan. What were you?
I mean, it was a really good month. I feel like really edified that. So what happened mostly was that our largest holding is up like 30% since the inception of the strategy. So that certainly is really nice. And yeah, I mean, like, I just like, it's so funny. When I just got so used to asset manager jargon that I was like, that's all so dumb. And like, I wrote, all that stuff off, and then I started like actually managing money, and like found myself like really
go on.
Well, I found myself like able to draw on all these conversations that were like, from all, and anyway, I just like, I've now organized the portfolio into like 5 pretty good themes.
Amazing.
Like high level themes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think what we were talking about in the last podcast, like slimming down to those 30 stocks,
It was fun to go through. I mean, just so everybody knows, I'm an investor in the product, and it was really cool to go in and see the holdings, and that platform you use is actually pretty slick.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
like Altruist, like they are. I mean, we should have them on at some point on the podcast.
Could make their business. It could really just supercharge,
I mean, they got like, $50 million from Vanguard in their Series C, but I think that really what they're waiting on is like that big media break.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they have a really good technology stack, and they have a simple product, which I think is really nice. So yeah, like I wish that it did more like telling you, like helping people evaluate my performance, because it just gives like raw number.
True statement. I had to ask you, like, why are we outperforming? It'd be neat but I don't think most managers actually necessarily want that communicated through some technology platform. They want to be able to talk about it in like their letter.
Yeah, exactly. And I am gearing up to write a letter, which is very like full circle for me, as you can imagine.
Totally. Hey, you're no longer the critic. You're the chef. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I get to eat my own cooking. Anyway, I see our guest is here, and I'm gonna go ahead and join him in. Well, we have Andrew Behar with us, who's the CEO of As You Sow, a literal icon in the area of shareholder activism, and like, I mean, you're like one of the guys in shareholder He's rolling his eyes and being bashful, but there's a short list of guys, and you're one of the guys. So I wonder if, maybe a way of getting us started on, this broad topic of like what people can do as a shareholder to get more out of their portfolio companies. Maybe you could give us like an overview of the powers that shareholders really have within kind of the system now.
Sure. Well, let me start with As You Sow, the organization that I'm the CEO of. We've been around for 30 years. We've been doing it since 1992. And we're focused on corporate accountability. And we do it through the lens of shareholders. Shareholders have an incredible amount of power, and most people don't realize it. And in fact, most shareholders abdicate their power before they even realize that they have the power. And that's a lot of our work, is to educate people about what you can do, how the system works, and the impact that you can have that actually just can be amplified, because when you get a company to change a policy or a practice, it ripples through their supply chain, it ripples through all their employees, it impacts their customers. So thousands of people can be impacted through a very small shift in corporate policy.
That's awesome. When we look at, I mean, you guys have done so much on so many fronts. It's like shocking and impressive at the same time. Can you talk us through how you choose the areas that you want to engage in, and then the steps you take to like go after it, so we can all kind of wrap our head around your process?
So we have basically several major programs. So the energy program, which encompasses climate change, and then within climate change, it's just grown over the years. We've been working on this for over a decade. So within climate change, we have oil and gas, utilities, pipelines, petrochemical, fracking, banks, and this year we're going to be adding insurance companies. A lot of components to climate change. The next area is all about plastics. It's about ocean plastics and looking at how do you reduce the use of single-use plastics and reduce plastics overall. The third area is environmental health, which is food systems. And we look at antibiotics and we look at pesticides. We just put out a report last week called Pesticides in the Pantry, which looks at the use of pesticides like glyphosate. Companies spray their wheat, oats, and beans right before they harvest it. So it's getting into all of our flour, into all of our food. And we've seen a major shift, just kind of a side story here. So we've been working on this. We wrote a report about 4 or 5 years ago, and we approached Kellogg and we said, you guys are spraying your wheat, oats, and beans with glyphosate, which is Roundup. It's a known carcinogen. And we think that there is systemic risk. We think that there's a material risk to shareholders. And so they looked at it. We also showed them that there was litigation going on with people who were spritzing glyphosate in their backyard. There was a $200 million and a $400 million settlement. And we said, imagine when people start to realize that it's in every bowl of Special K, that this is going to be bigger than tobacco. And they said, you know what, you're right. And they signed a no glyphosate pledge, and they've been working on it now for several years, moving it into their whole supply chain. So all the farmers supplying for Kellogg's. 2 years ago, we put out a report, a scorecard. one company was working on this.
Oh,
And we just put out a new one, a second one just last week. Now, a dozen companies. So half of the food companies are now embracing regenerative agriculture. And we believe it's because Kellogg, by doing this, was a leader, and investors started to put money into this leading organization. Customers started to say, Kellogg Food's going to be safer to eat. And so they started to get more market share. And suddenly the whole sector is following them. And this is how we work. This is how we're trying to generate the signals in order to get companies to really create a regenerative economy based on justice and sustainability. And companies who don't want to go there, they're going to stay in the current extractive model. And we believe they're going to wind down. That we're at this moment in time where there's this shift that is happening, and companies are picking one road or the other. And so it's an amazing moment, and just the change over 2 years is quite dramatic. I didn't finish the whole social side of things. So on the social side, we work on racial justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, excessive CEO pay, and slavery and supply chain. So those are the main program areas.
We are not overpaid here in terms of the Free Money Podcast CEOs. We're co-CEOs. But what I was going to ask you, when you think about adding insurance, why not add asset management? Why not, these are organizations that are ostensibly going to go price climate risk or integrate climate risk into their underwriting or into, property and casualty policies or whatever it is. Why not add the full financial services industry, all the people that are allocating capital?
Well, we are working with banks. So we started with the Dakota Access Pipeline, where we're working with Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Citi, and getting them to what we call financed emissions, to disclose financed emissions. At that point, at the point of DAPL, banks were making loans to companies that were running pipelines across sacred indigenous land. And they were just saying, hey, we gave them money. We don't know what they're doing. It's not our problem. And we're saying, it actually is, because your brand is being associated with people being hosed down with fire hoses, indigenous people in sub-zero temperature, that your brand is on that now. And they had to say, you know what, it's true. It is true. And so they started to now, with quite a lot of precision, to actually say that any of the greenhouse gases from loans that they make are going to be disclosed and are going to be accounted for. So that's part of it. So banks is a big part of it. We also have a platform where we evaluate mutual funds. So we rank and rate 3,000 mutual funds, updated once a month.
Cool.
On fossil fuels, which means big oil, coal, pipelines again, fossil-fired utilities, as well as deforestation. We look at private prisons. We look at weapons, gender. So we are looking at banks in terms of the banks who are funding deforestation, and we're about to add banks that are funding climate change. But you asked me about asset managers. So folks like BlackRock.
Mutual funds count. There you go.
Yeah, so BlackRock's a big company, and BlackRock could have a major impact on shifting the whole nature of things. I mean, when BlackRock says we're gonna vote in a certain way, companies, they scurry to try to get on the right side of that. And that's something that we've asked BlackRock often and in different ways. We filed resolutions with BlackRock 2 years ago and then last year. And this linked to, they signed a pledge to shift from what's called shareholder primacy to stakeholder primacy. Now, in the summer of 2019, the Business Roundtable came out with a new purpose of a corporation. A whole new philosophy of why a business should exist. It basically threw Milton Friedman's ideas under the bus. The World Economic Forum also came out then a few months later in January and supported it. So basically all the major structures, all the big business globally has now come around to thinking aligned with shareholders. For 50 years, when the Jesuit priests and the nuns were there at GM talking about apartheid, that was about stakeholder capitalism. That was about take care of your employees, take care of your community, your customers, and your supply chain, and you will have a more successful company. So it involves looking at a little bit longer term than what companies are used to. But now, well, all the companies have agreed to us to the same philosophy that we've been talking about. And so this whole idea of this regenerative economy is really an offshoot of that. This is the implementation of the new philosophy. So we've been talking to BlackRock about how are you going to implement this? And they've improved. This year they voted last year or previously year, 17% they voted against management. This year, 34%. So they doubled it. They've hired a new person.
Wow.
They seem to be moving in the right direction. Don't think it's there yet. Vanguard's not a public company. We can't file a resolution at Vanguard. And Vanguard will vote with management pretty much all the time. Vanguard's whole philosophy is indexing. We don't touch the companies. We just place our bet on the extractive economy, and wherever it falls, it falls. Vanguard's a problem because most companies have their 401k plan. That's their retirement plan in Vanguard Retirement, in what are called target date funds, which are heavily invested in fossil fuels, deforestation. And in fact, we just published the 401k report cards on Amazon, Comcast, Visa, Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook. And we're going to be working our way through the S&P 500. But the point is, Amazon, well, they have 100,000 electric vehicles. They're taking their data centers, powering them with renewables. But every Amazon employee is invested in companies that, yes, are burning down the Amazon. And the cognitive dissonance of that is, I think, really powerful. And so we met with Amazon about it. And the first meeting was great. They were like, yeah, you're right. As a person, these are people who are running the 401k plan. I'm invested in these. I didn't realize it. The second meeting, they simply shut it down. They must have, it was like a few weeks later, they just said, we're not changing anything, nor do we want to discuss it any further. So we've escalated. We're filing a shareholder resolution. And so we're going to, escalate it as it should be. And employees really should be thinking about this. As an Amazon employee, do you want to be invested in companies burning down the Amazon? It's a pretty simple question.
That's a really, really interesting, kind of frontier of advocacy. Because as an asset manager, that's a thing. Predictably catering to a very, granola-y segment of the population with Invest Vegan, my vegan asset manager. But usually you have this period where people go, I haven't thought about that. Then they realize it and they go, oh my God, that's terrifying. And then they go, it's either too hard or I'm going to do something about it.
But here's the thing. If you lined up, and you can do this on our tool, you can go there, just go up there and select target date funds. Put the Vanguard 2030, 2035 target date, the BlackRock one, the TIA one, and there's a company called Natixis that has a sustainable one. And you look at them and you go, look at the grades, and you're going to see D's and F's in every one except Natixis. And then look at the returns. Natixis beats them every single year. They outdo So the fiduciary, it's actually legally required that if they're going to be just looking at financial returns, they would actually be investing in the sustainable fund, if those are the target date funds you're going to pick from. So the argument around that there's more risk, it's just a myth. And I think people are ready to dispel it. But the problematic thing is, and this goes for sort of the whole human race, because if you look at every pension fund in the world, nobody knows how they're invested. Everybody's working hard. I mean, people are working and they're putting away, 2%, 4%, whatever it is, for their retirement, for the future. Across the planet, they are invested in companies that are making sure there's not going to be a future to retire into. And you look at that and go, that's really an interesting design that the banking industry has created to keep everybody in the dark. Why not just tell everybody exactly where they're in, what they're invested in? And that's what we're about. That's what As You Sow is determined to have complete transparency at every 401k plan, 403b plan, all the endowments, all the foundations, and all the pension funds. Nobody has a clue what's going on.
That's like a very free money,
I mean, it's like it's literal music. Like I can stand up and dance.
Yeah, I mean,
True. I mean, we're just putting out these data sets. I mean, every month we're updating the data set, and we built the code base of investor values to be able to show every mutual fund and ETF in the world. We just don't have the funding to license the data from Morningstar, but we literally could do that if somebody said, "Hey, let's expand this," and we intend to. We're gonna find somebody to fund this eventually.
I'm curious, like, most of the people listening to this will be institutional investors who are, like probably pretty aligned, just by virtue of being a part of the small group of insane people who listen to this podcast, with the idea of getting this transparency out there. What does partnering with As You Sow look like for, say, like, what was the name of the Ohio based plan you threw out earlier, Ashby?
Oh no. I can't remember what it was. Anyway,
but for a given mid-sized plan, what would the nature of that engagement look like, and what would you be looking for in that?
So a couple things. One, we have a voting service called As You Vote. It sits on the Broadridge Proxy Edge platform. So and endowments and financial advisors and mutual funds, they subscribe to As You Vote. So we vote every one of their shares at every company on every issue. And we're way cheaper than ISS, and we are completely ESG aligned.
Amazing.
We believe there should be 50% women on the board. We vote against a vast majority of the overpaid CEO, say on pay. We vote for every shareholder resolution, except for the ones there's a few that are put out by like very right-wing conservative groups. So that's one thing you could do. And also, just a note, the fee that's charged by Broadridge, it's $15 per meeting. They keep $5 for their services. They give us $10. We use $5 for advocacy. We donate out the other $5 to groups that are doing education on sustainable investing. So to help the whole field, to educate endowments and foundations. So the money you'd be spending on voting at ISS would be much better spent on more advocacy and education.
That's a no-brainer.
No-brainer. Yeah. The other thing that we do, so we filed, so last year, or actually this year, in 2021, we engaged 188 companies on all those issues I discussed before. And of those, 102 companies said, "Hey, this is great data, great idea, let's go do it," or somewhere like that. 86 told us to take a hike. And so we filed a shareholder resolution. So we escalated to an 86 of them. Of those, once we got into it, about half of them, we found a way to withdraw. In other words, they agreed to terms, we withdrew. So only about 42 or so went to vote. And of those, we had a 43% vote and 5 majority votes, including a 98% vote at General Electric. We had a majority vote at American Express on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So big votes. And so we don't own shares of any companies. So people who do own underlying shares, we have, there's companies we are engaging with. If we find people who care about the subject, who own the shares, and they authorize us to file on their behalf. So another way to work with us is to authorize us to work with us to either co or lead file resolutions. So that goes on. And those are really two really actionable things that that companies can do. And the third thing is really look at what's in your portfolio. And we help people do that a lot, where we do an analysis of their retirement plan, for instance. And you find that they're generally out of alignment with the sustainability goals of the organization. So, look at all of that is really important.
How do you know when you're doing one of these, maybe it's when you're escalating or when you're any of these engagements, when you're really striking a chord and having impact? Like, what is that outcome that you're looking to achieve in one of these projects?
So let me tell you a couple stories, I think is really the best way to do it. So an example would be friends of ours, colleagues who create a scorecard. It always starts with research. You got to start with research, because when you do the research well and your methodology is solid and your key performance indicators are solid, Now you can make an economic story to the company. What you're doing is you're coming with a new economic plan. So company scores a 0 on know the chain. That means that they've got slavery in their supply chain. It's not going to be good for the brand. So we called them up and we said, hi, we represent shareholders. You guys scored a 0 on know the chain. These people are experts. I mean, we really know them. We've worked with them for a decade. Your direct competitor scored a 52. Like, what up? Like, what's going on here? And they're like, well, it's just not our issue. We don't, it's just not our thing. And so
slavery.
Yeah.
Imagine being that guy.
Not our things. We got other issues.
This is their head attorney. This is an attorney I'm talking to. Okay, it's like a vice president level attorney. Yeah. So I said, well, that's just not good enough because it's associated with your brand now. You scored a 0. He's like, well, I'll go talk to the board and stuff. So they comes back and he goes, we're just not going to do anything. Will you withdraw? And I'm like, no, why would I withdraw? So anyway, no, or at that point we hadn't filed. So we're going to file a resolution. So we filed a resolution. We get, now, by the way, these votes are non-binding. So even if you get a 98% vote, the company doesn't have to do it. But if you get above a majority, what happens is, and the company does nothing, people will vote against the board the next year. So an ISS and Glass Lewis, the proxy advisors, generally will do that. So anyway, we put in the resolution, have more meetings. We get a 20% vote, which is pretty solid for your first year resolution. Anyway, all this publicity around it, the company kind of came to their senses. When I was at the annual meeting, this is pre-COVID, I met with some of the board members, like during the coffee break. And they said, we got it, we get it. So after the meeting, the company literally hired an outside consultant. They completely transformed their entire purchasing department, all their contracts. And we laid out a withdrawal agreement to not file again. And it laid out what the targets are going to hit in 2020, 2021, all the way up through 2025. And I meet with them every year. And they always beat their targets every year. In 10 months, they did a complete transformation, which we then use as a case study for all these other companies to say, we can't do it. It'll take years. It's going to cost too much. It's doable.
Amazing.
And so that's like one example. Another example, antibiotics in meat, in poultry in particular. So we see this as a real problem, that there's what happens if you're giving poultry every meal, they're getting antibiotics in their feed. The bacteria start to evolve and you get superbugs that become antibiotic resistant. Very dangerous. So we went to Tyson, Purdue, Sanderson, the big poultry producers, and we said, this is a problem. And they said, take a hike. So we took a hike down to their customers, to McDonald's, and we said, this is really important. And they said, well, it's like we have so much going on. And we have a good relationship with McDonald's. We got them to stop using styrofoam and things. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So we took a hike down and talked to their customers. So there's all these moms and dads that are like mom and dad bloggers. They're saying, we're not going to let our kids eat chicken McNuggets because of superbugs. So help them amplify the message, took that back upstream to McDonald's. We go, we have a McNugget crisis here. We're having a market share crisis. And they said, you're right. They signed a no antibiotic pledge. We took it to Wendy's. They did. KFC. Once you get KFC, man, you're pretty good if you're doing poultry. Burger King took that upstream, and Tyson, Purdue, Sanderson all said, okay, all of our customers are not going to buy our product. We have to change. So it took us a couple of years, but using market forces, we worked our way through a supply chain and got significant, change. I'll give you one more.
It's awesome.
I don't want to take up too much time, but Ocean Plastics. We filed a resolution at Yum Brands where we met with them. They didn't want to do anything. And by the time we got a good vote, et cetera, they agreed to stop using styrofoam in 6,700 stores globally. McDonald's agreed to, Dunkin' to. 3 billion styrofoam cups were not produced this year because of that shareholder advocacy. And we're there's like a team of 2 people, that are doing this. And so, who are focused on specialized on ocean plastic. So That's significant. And that has an impact on oil and gas production, because oil and gas are the feedstocks for styrofoam, plus all the marine animals that are all the styrofoam that gets into the ocean. They think it's food and they eat it. And so you can have a real impact. It's a very leveraged impact.
I want to give you all my money. It's just so impactful. It's like we're sitting here trying to solve these problems, and you're like, "Yeah, I had two guys. We like, you know, 3 billion
Yeah, no,
things."
but let me push back on that, because communications is absolutely critical. That people don't understand their power, and you guys are talking about it, and you guys are getting people to actually realize it. The telling of the stories and the communications is as important as all the other work. It is. You need all of it. And I think one of the reasons that we do so well is that we work with grassroots groups. You got to have frontline communities, the most impacted customers. You work with the consumers, you work with shareholders, and then eventually it turns into policy. But what's interesting about policy, because we've seen this where we don't really do policy work, because we've seen, like, laws change and suddenly there's all these fines, and then the companies just go, oh yeah, we have a line item in our budget. This had to do with fracking. We had a whole thing around using diesel fuel as a fracking lubricant. And we spent so much energy on it. And the companies are just like, oh yeah, we got $25 million line item. That's for environmental fines. Yeah. They didn't change their practices. They just simply allocate a portion of their profits to the fines. So you need it all.
Yeah.
You got to have all of those vectors of power working together in order to actually get a transition. It's not easy.
That's a great example of when a fine can sort of become a license in the way that it's like, functionally, contemplated. I mean, and, one of the things that obviously is underlying all of this is great research. And like, I'm a big user of your reports. And like, please keep putting them out. I love them. But there was one that I saw, that looked at how asset management firms vote their proxies when they have a commercial relationship with the company that they're voting on. And like, I guess, like, it's not shocking that, like, if, say, some asset manager is, dealing with a client thing, they're not going to get all activisty on them. But I'm curious what to you that says about stakeholder capitalism and kind of the nature of the plumbing of this whole system.
So, I mean, imagine you were an asset manager, and would you vote against the CEO pay package of somebody who's deciding whether you're going to get a massive contract or not? It's very difficult. and here's the thing, and I talked to the companies after we put that out. They were not happy. They felt that the name of it, that we were saying, we should have put a question mark. We should have said conflict of interest question mark. I actually regret that. We should have said, here's the data. Is there a conflict of interest, as opposed to implying or stating that there was intention? Because they say they've actually got firewalls between these things. Now, the fact that 6 years in a row at every single company, but can you actually draw a correlation? That's really a question. We're actually going to be redoing the report with new data from 2021, and we're going to be acknowledging that, because they called us up and met with us, and I really take their input quite seriously. So we had good meetings, and we took them through our data in deep detail, and they agreed that our data was accurate, that we had accurately pulled 3 million data points, as well as scraped all of the data from the SEC filings. So it wasn't like they were wrong. It was just, was there intentionality behind it? And I don't know that. So I think that maybe one solution is that if you are the record keeper, if you're running the 401k plan for a company, you should recuse yourself from voting on their proxies, because you're going to be, I think it's really hard to not be somehow biased if you've got, you're doing business with them. So or what I think is even a better solution, with that, they would assign it to an independent third party, like as you sow. So if, say, BlackRock had the Amazon, or actually it's Vanguard, has the Amazon 401k plan, they should assign us the right to vote because we're an independent third party. The other thing that's happened, you've seen BlackRock actually just announce that they are letting the pension funds, their biggest clients, are going to be able to decide on their own voting guidelines. So you got like a CalPERS or a CalSTRS, or any of these big pension funds are going to be able to say, rather than voting ISS standard, which means voting against all the resolutions, I want to vote ISS. I want to vote ISS SRI, which would vote for all the resolutions. So now, on the one hand, it splits the vote. So we got to go convince more pension funds now to vote for our resolutions, that it's the right move. But I think it was an interesting move by BlackRock to do that, to actually take the pressure, because they were getting so much pressure for the way they vote. They're saying, well, we're just going to let our clients vote. But now take that out to the extreme. We know there's a startup that's actually created technology to completely split the vote into fractional shares. So if you own some shares of a Vanguard or BlackRock ETF, you could vote your own. Now that means, though, that we're going to have to go out and train everybody. Well, all these retail people don't vote, and that's a problem. Like 30% of all of the shares out there are simply not voted.
Yeah.
And so when we do our calculus of how this is going to come out, you sort of don't count the retail. And if everybody got together and started to vote, it would be a huge, that would be a total shift. I think you'd start to see way more majority votes. I mean, look, this year in 2021, there were 34 majority votes. That's more than double what the highest number in the previous years. Let's put it this way. As you saw, had 5 majority votes this year. We had 4 last year. The previous 27 years, we had 2.
Yeah, and there were like 6,500, 7,000 public companies in the U.S.
I mean, just that.
Yeah.
Can it keep growing like that? I don't know. This is going to be an interesting year this year.
I'm hopeful. Yeah, I mean, like my custodial platform that I have for our separate accounts doesn't allow us to vote shares yet, but it will in the next 6 months. Probably. I don't know what startup you were talking about, but
are you doing it with who's doing your voting for you?
Well, I would be picking the votes, but
you're going to vote them yourself?
Yeah, but it would be Altruist that's doing the stuff. I mean, although I'm sure I will be paying very close attention to what the good folks at As You Sow put out. I feel like I could talk to you about this for hours. Thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Thank you.
And,
sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I guess just one last thing, which is just know what you own. Like, first thing to do is just look at everything that you own and realize that you have incredible power, not just on your investments. You probably don't know what's in your 401k. Ask, look. We build asyousow.org, ASYOUSOW.org. There's tools, invest your value. You can figure it out. Talk to your 401k plan manager. You can actually change this. But also everything you buy, like, think about that. Every time you buy something, it's a vote. Where you bank, it's a vote. Every time if you have a credit card, you are sending signals. And so just don't underestimate your power, and don't abdicate your power. Use it and organize. If shareholders can organize, the bottom line is every company, the board of directors reports to you. You're a shareholder. If the board of directors can't set a strategy and incentivize their executives to execute on that strategy, then they are failing in their fundamental oversight duties, and they report to you. So you've got to let them know. Otherwise, you have failed in your duties. So it's use your power.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and long distance high five to you, sir.
Exactly.
Where are you guys based?
I'm in Brooklyn, Ashby's and Los Gatos.
Yep.
Oh, great. Oh, okay. Where are you in Brooklyn?
I'm in Bed-Stuy.
Okay. Yeah, my son just was in Greenpoint. He just moved to Providence. Yeah, I know.
Edgy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Couldn't take this 600 square foot apartment anymore. You got a 5-bedroom house for less.
Oh, that's
It's amazing.
and depressing.
Yeah, well, you got better pizza. Well,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, it's good to
no,
chat.
I'm in New York. I was born in New York and went to NYU and lived there forever until I moved out to the West Coast. So, yeah, that's home.
It's the right place to be. All right. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
We'll chat to you soon.
Yeah. No, pleasure. Be well.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Wow.
Amazing.
Well, what an interview. I know you have to go in like 1 minute.
No, I can go till we can finish the thing.
Oh, okay. Is your
340. I pushed it back to 340.
Oh, nice move.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, how fucking cool is Andy Behar? Like,
Well, I give you like ridiculous props for finding like that other person out there that like I would want to be when I grow up. You know,
yeah,
but
that's it. Yeah, I mean, like sometimes usually you find the guest. Sometimes when I find the guest, though, I'm like, this Ashby and this guy are gonna have a bromance,
dude. Like his whole thing about like just know what you own, like use the markets to fix the markets, like do judo moves on people. You know, when he's like, look at Natixis's like funds, like it outperforms. Like he says all the stuff. Like, please give this guy more money. You know, like I just want him to ramp what he's doing.
Yeah, seriously. And I can't stress enough to everybody who's listening. When an As You Sow report drops, you're fucking crazy not to pay attention to it, just because it every single time will give you insight into industry level stuff in sustainability that is not typically captured in frameworks. You know, like they're out here they're going like, oh wow, like this pesticide that people haven't thought about is out there. And like, I don't know. It seems
he's a storyteller too, which is like he said, it's a very effective way of explaining what's going on. You find a really good case study that illustrates the power. Good for them.
Yeah. We'll have to do when we get when we do Free Money Live, the conference. We'll have to get him back for a fireside chat. But it's time for Dear Ashby.
Oh, we're skipping to that. What about the hard thing?
Oh shit, hard thing. Sorry. I got all kerfuffled.
You're supposed to go.
Yeah. Let's do the
There
hard
it
things.
is.
Yeah. What's your hard thing? You started talking about the hard thing before.
Yeah, you're gonna edit it out though.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound too crazy. My hard thing. So I've been pitching a lot, and I find that when you're a founder of anything, or you're building something new, you got to tell the same story over and over again. And this week, I had one of these situations where I had 3 half-an hours in a row where I had to tell the same story, like literally the same story. And on the third half hour, I looked up at the people that were there, and they looked pretty bored, or like there was I think I caught a strange look on one of their eyes. And so I got worried that I was telling them something that I had already told them in that meeting. So like I was literally repeating myself. And so I stopped and I was like, did I already say this to you guys? And then they all kind of looked up and they were like, no, you didn't.
Oh, thank God.
No, but it was like, instead of like repeating it to them, I ended up being like that crazy person that has voices in their head. Yeah, so either way, like it ended poorly for me. But yeah, so that was hard. How about you?
Let's see. I think so. I do this weird thing in my portfolio where I only buy and sell stocks once a month. And I somewhat arbitrarily decided that the buy sell day was going to be the new moon. Because I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's like it keeps me out of the cycle of the market or whatever.
Yeah.
And so,
if you use your crystals.
And
I mean, I don't. It's not as much as like. It's just like it's you got to pick a date. Some people pick the first and whatever. But if you're trying to do that, like, how do you determine when you put in the trades? Because the new moon usually happens after the market's closed. So I had this thing where I was like,
fair point. Day
like,
after, yeah.
Do I put like I settled on finally putting it in after the new moon happens, so that it's the first day of the new moon that the trades go in. But in the meantime, I was panicking because like one of my biggest holdings is, like we said in the beginning, is up a bunch. And it was trading up and up and up and up and up. And I was like, no, come on. No.
Am I missing my,
But then it actually sold off literally the day. And which is like what I've found has happened, which is so weird and unscientific and crazy. But I actually think that this weird hippy dippy pattern that I've developed is like, well, it's it's like how biodynamic farming works. Like you're supposed to like do certain things at certain moon
fair
patterns.
Point.
I haven't like gotten to the point where I could call myself a biodynamic asset manager, but nor am I full of it enough to want to do that.
Biodynamics as applied to investing.
I don't think I'm quite ready to jump the shark.
Awesome.
But yeah, that was my hard thing.
It's a good one.
Let's do Dear Ashby.
Let's do it.
So just a quick overview. This is the part of the show where we take questions from listeners.
And we eat super spicy hot wings.
And we eat super spicy hot wings.
Just joking.
The first question is, how do we feel about pensions investing in cryptocurrencies?
How do we feel? I feel okay about it. I know there's been a bunch of news about this lately. And I think of it as like a potentially interesting diversifier. Just like, if you go back to the 90s and you think about, you could have invested in eBay or you could have invested in pets.com. I think it's okay if you've got long-term investors investing in the eBays out there. I would say that's probably more like Ethereum rather than Dogecoin. But it's like this is a new business model. I mean, the true like speculative maybe you do it through like broadly diversified funds and the way that you used to access venture capital.
Yep.
But I think at this point, there's so much value that's being created. You probably need some exposure. If like you think of like a highly diversified, broad portfolio, multi-asset, you probably need to do something.
A lot of people seem to be just like clutching their pearls about it. Like, oh yes, well, but yeah, like I mean, people like pensions invest in all kinds of esoteric assets.
Yeah. Like you think of a pension as being conservative, but the reality is they have to go take risk. That's the first thing. Like to meet the return targets, they got to take risk. There's no return without investment risk. And so where are they going to get that risk? It's not from US Treasuries, And then it's like, well, what risk is prudent? Well, I would say like based on what I know about Ethereum and all the different coins that are being built on top of it, it's like legit.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good take. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's like it seems kind of nuts to not own any at all. Next question is, should real estate be tax deductible?
That's right. You know what? I like anything that incentivizes people to invest in real shit rather than tokenized animal coins. Like the good news about your house is it's a real thing that you can watch over and cultivate. I like that. I think it was in the last tax cut. They only had that incentive up to a mortgage that is still pretty big. It was like $700K or something.
Yeah.
Because like people with jumbo mortgages shouldn't, that's like, we don't need to be incentivizing people to go get giant mansions. But for people, that are looking to get on the housing ladder and want to get a $400K mortgage, I think it's okay to give them an incentive to write the interest off.
Yeah.
the reality is, like, interest rates have been so freaking low that it hasn't been that big of a write-off anyways. But at some point, it may come back.
Yeah, I guess, the one question that I see embedded in this question is, should real estate be an asset at all? Like, should we be thinking about our home as an investable asset, or should we be thinking about it as, like the Germans famously all rent. I probably brought that up 100 times on this podcast, but
I dig it. And if we had like a proper retirement industry that prepared people for their future, I would be like, yeah, like is homeownership the right thing? Unfortunately, we've kind of outsourced retirement security to homes.
Yeah. Yep.
I know my parents. I mean, my parents' home
savings vehicle
is a forced savings vehicle. My house is a forced savings vehicle. It's like if you live in California and you own a home, like, dude, a big part of your wealth is in your house by definition, unless you happen to be, some VC or something.
Yeah, exactly. You own a 1-bedroom house for $2 million.
Yeah, for real. That's like a real thing.
Yeah, that's a very real thing. The last question I love. What would the evil version of you be like?
No. How do you know we're not talking to the evil version of me? I love this one because I was like, all right, and I started thinking through like, what is the evil version of me? And I kind of started out being like a hedge fund guy, And I was like, no, don't be so fast to like think about it, And then I was like, all right, so let's start with the premise of what is like my objective here with free money, but also with all the other shit I'm working on. I want to this is me getting real with you, son. I kind of want to fix capitalism. That's why I loved that guest today. Yep. I think like sustainable, capitalism is this incredible engine of opportunity and freedom, and like just fucking imagine if we could make it more resilient and sustainable and like start pricing climate change and move capital to the right places. So like that's what I'm working on at Stanford, at Hadapar, on the Free Money podcast.
Indeed.
And so then I'm like, okay, so if my purpose as in theory the positive Ashby is to fix capitalism, the evil Ashby wants to ensure capitalism remains broken in order to maximize the profits I can extract from that broken system for myself and my friends. I would revel in the uneven, unfair nature of markets. I would actively encourage, in fact, that these markets remain broken so I can get richer. So basically, I would be a hedge fund manager. I ended where I started.
Yep. Yeah.
My side hurts.
Yeah, no, but like, I mean, it's, I was, as you were talking, I was like, is he going to be talking about like some like private equity strategy where he like uses lobbyists to like,
but like, it's if you think about like how hedge funds make money, right? Like they want the shit broken because there's mispricing and arbitrage and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks that they actively seek to maintain those dysfunctions.
I mean, I'm sure some do. I mean, like there's so many hedge funds, right? It only takes 100 to give the whole industry a bad reputation.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I would also,
but some are good people. Some I hear are good people.
I mean, we got to build a wall.
Around Wall Street. Why do you think
Greenwich.
they call it Wall Street? That's where we're going to lock them.
Yeah, no, I mean, like none of them are on Wall Street anymore. They're all up in Greenwich.
That's true.
Taxes
are too high.
Yeah, exactly. I think I too would be a hedge fund manager if I were more evil.
Yeah.
And who knows? I like Invest Vegan may at some point start a hedge fund, but
Impact hedge fund. We can like blow up. You
can do that shit.
Yeah,
I mean, but I mean, we're making it cool.
We are.
All right.
Garden tip.
Garden tip.
I got one quick one, and then I got to go.
All right.
Here it is. Don't secure your 21-foot inflatable Halloween blow-up cat to one of your trees because it will pull it over.
Did you lose another tree?
I did. God dang. I think I would know better. I didn't know what to tie my giant cat. This cat was so big, it's like you could see it from space.
Is your house just like
you could barely see my house?
Is it just a bunch of like holes now that all of your trees have?
No, I keep propping them back up. That was another tip I've given. You can prop them back up, get some dirt, some water. But what I'm trying to tell you here is when you've got those great inflatables, and I encourage you to go to Amazon and search by height, inflatable and height. And that's what I did. I got a 21-foot cat. Think about that. It's taller than my house.
That's a big cat.
Yeah. No, I looked out my daughter's like window and I was like staring at the cat. She's on the second floor. It's pretty legit.
But that also would probably function like a sail.
And it did. It turns out. Yeah.
Yep.
What's your tip?
My tip is get your bulbs in the ground again.
It's still time.
It's still time. I finally got my last bulb in the ground. I was getting in the mood for the Free Money podcast right before this.
Nice.
I got my garlic bulbs in the ground. I got my I got a checkered lily that has this really kind of cool pattern. And it's not too late to plant garlic in a lot of places.
Amazing.
All
right.
So yeah, that's it.
You heard it here second.
Soak it in hydrogen peroxide if you're going to do it with the garlic.
Now there is a new tip. That's your tip. That's the tip.
That's the tip.
That's the tip. Soak it in hydrogen peroxide, whatever it's called.
Peroxide. Yeah, hydrogen peroxide. It's great. Actually, you can spray hydrogen peroxide on your plants normally, and you should.
Oh my God, you guys are getting so many fucking tips.
The podcast drips with alpha. All right, we love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm looking like money, 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 money. Let me get rain on them. Money, 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 money.